Hey everyone, in this video we're going to go over the UV unwrapping process for our model. So what we have here is our model that is completed as far as the modeling process goes. Now it's time to lay this model flat in a 2D UV space that will then allow us to apply textures to it. So to do this, I want to use, when we're working with low res assets, we want to recycle as many items as possible, so therefore we can get a smaller, we can get larger textures in there, but also using a smaller texture map. So for example, kind of the rule of thumb is if you aren't going to see it simultaneously, then you can most definitely unwrap it. Or you can most definitely mirror it over. So therefore, like for example, this part right here is not going to be seen on this side, on this opposite side. We'll never see it at the same time. So therefore, I can mirror this over. Now, sometimes though, despite that, you might want to recycle materials such as these three, because the reality is that they should look the same because it's a manufactured piece. So it should look the same, and also because they're being broken up by these other two boards as well. So for this, I can unwrap one, and I'll just duplicate the unwrapping over 3 times or 2 times in this case, and that way, whatever I paint to this one piece here will apply automatically to these other 2 pieces. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to start off by I think I'll just start off with the biggest piece and being this, and then we're going to try to work fairly quickly through. So the first piece I will go a little slower, and then I'll work at a faster rate beyond that piece. So I want to trim this up in a way, like I have to think about how, strategically, how can I cut this so everything looks fairly flat and I'm not getting a bunch of really random pieces. So even before doing this, I want to select everything here. So Control A while I'm in object mode, and I want to go ahead and apply scale. Now the reason is because if I don't apply a scale, then when I'm unwrapping it, it potentially could just kind of give me some unexpected or undesirable results. So now I want to just select this piece here, hit Shift-I to isolate it, and that's how I kind of like to do it. And then I want to start to select with my edge selection. I want to select a few seams. And so the cool thing is if I hit Shift and Control, it'll find the shortest path. And as you saw right there, it did skip a couple seams I wanted. But I want to just simply pop out this back piece. Since this back piece is flat, I think that makes most sense. So now what I want to do, and I don't have to worry about, I could cut these, but I don't have to worry about cutting the bottom since they're already next, there's no face that's connecting to it, so therefore it'll automatically apply that seam there. So what I want to do now is right click and mark seam, and so now you'll see this is orange. Now I will say be careful because also mark sharp is there. Mark sharp is blue. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and just mark that sharp real quick. You'll see it's blue, but we want to mark seam, which is kind of a red. So that's pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and do this for a few other pieces here. I want to lay this out flat. And kind of the rule of thumb typically is if it's 90 degrees, you can lay it flat. But in this case, I want to try to create these islands as large as I can, so when I'm actually coming through and texturing it, I can see where everything's going. So I'm not seeing this really random rectangle somewhere. Like, where's this piece go to? So I want to try to make them as big and identifiable pieces as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and just select all this real quick and go to my UV editing. And if I were to right click and go to unwrap, you'll see already I have this piece here, which I just unwrapped. This piece right here is there. So that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to go ahead and unwrap this piece. And all I really need to do for this is just simply cut this seam right here. And then it's going to lay flat pretty nicely. So as you see here, this lays flat. And actually these two edges here and here actually do touch. But by cutting that seam right across here, they lay really nicely flat. So the back is done. I might want to go ahead and cut this piece here, just cut it off completely, and then from there I'll work with it. So I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to cut this inside out, maybe I'll cut that off, and now I'm going to, and I think I also might cut off this mantle piece. And so I'm gonna go ahead and unwrap that. Now let's go ahead and put the spacing a little larger. We'll fix that a bit. So this piece here, I'm not really sure where this is. Oh yeah, it's the inside there. So what I can do is I'm just gonna cut a seam here and here. And I think that should allow me to lay that flat, and it does. So now you see here, it lays very nicely flat, and that's pretty good. In fact, automatically this piece here laid pretty flat for me, which I'm pretty pleased with. I think that the only part of there that didn't, that might need a little tweaking is right here. I could potentially, let me go ahead and get this. I could potentially move this one vertex up. I just want to, in this case, move it so it locks in with this. And then also I can move this one over so it locks in. And that looks pretty good. So what I did there is I toggle on this sync selection. And so now, basically with that on, it'll show me everything. But if I turn it off, it'll only show me what I have selected. So maybe if I were to select all these pieces here, like so, I can then turn it off and just manipulate just those pieces. So if I want to perhaps take these and make sure they're nice and squared, I can do that there. But that is totally up to you if you're that kind of person who wants everything to look perfectly level. Then maybe that's what you want to do. Usually that's kind of me. I'm kind of that person that likes to have things line up nicely, just because I'm kind of I'm kind of, and sometimes I'm kind of perfectionist in that way. Okay, so that edge looks pretty good. And so the only other piece I need to worry about at this point is up here. And I think maybe if I just simply put a cut right along here, that might lay this flat for me. So let's see. So it kind of lays it flat for me. Not perfect. I might put another seam right there and try it again. It still is a little strange in the sense that, it's, it's probably more or less looking for a seam right along here. Now what I can do for this case, I could, so I could try to lay this completely flat. The only problem with that is it's going to give me a little bit of a strange look. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut the seam right there. And let's go ahead and lay that out. And that looks a little better. I know it's not perfectly. We do have a few random islands, but for the most part, our islands do make sense. So the other piece I want to work on is I want these two, this foot to lay flat. So I think if I were to cut two seams here, I think that will lay. There you go. Now that lays pretty flat. So here's the sides. This being side one, the front, and the other side, and then these three triangles being the top. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, so I think that overall the mantle is done. So what I could do in this case, I could just go ahead and hide it. And my shortcut for that is Control H, and then I like to hide it because then that means I'm done with it, and I don't think about, like, did I unwrap this yet or no? And so it's kind of nice to hide things. I'm gonna go ahead and actually cut this piece in half. So, oops, let's see, I'm gonna turn off. Let's cut that piece in half. And then I'm going to isolate with Shift I, and I'm going to delete this half here. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I don't think that it's going to, I think that'll be a little bit easier to just texture this once instead of texturing it twice. So I'm going to mark those seams, and let's see, that looks pretty good. Oh, I have this part right here that I need to cut a seam in. There you go. So now yep, there you go. So that's the bottom. Here is the top right here, and then here's all the sides right there. So that's pretty clean. In that case, I can go in object mode and just Control H, hide that piece there. So I'm going to do that same thing for a few other pieces. In this case, I already have a modifier here, so I'm just going to delete that modifier and just worry about. So another thing is when you're unwrapping, you want to make sure to hide the seams as best as possible. Now the seams probably won't be seen in this case since we're doing a lot of baking, but if I put the seam on the inside here, it's a lot lower chance of being seen than if I put it on the outside here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the seam on the inside. I want to mark the seam. This is a pretty easy one. That one's going to lay really flat for me. So back to object mode, select that and Control H to hide it. So let's go ahead and isolate this foot. Actually, well, I think we're fine there. Yeah, we'll be good. Okay, so yeah, I want to go ahead and cut a few of these here. I think maybe if I were to cut these seams right here, it'll lay really flat for me. A nice thing about cutting these seams is I think then I could even, I don't like how that looks. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut the whole entire edge there and there. And then that way I'm not dealing with a really weird looking shape, because this here takes up a lot less space than the other shape. So now go back to object mode with my 4 key and then Control H to hide that, and we're good there. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to do a few more of these. So anything that's mirrored, I'm going to delete the mirror and then just unwrap the one piece here. So and this one's actually fairly easy. I just need to cut seams along these 2 front edges, and then it'll just fan out like so. So that one's pretty easy to work with. And really, let's go ahead. There you go. Same thing for this one. I'm going to delete the mirror modifier, and then if I were just to add a seam right there, I think this will lay out really easy for me, and it does. So that's always nice when we have a really easy, and the reason that it lays out so flat for me too is because I'm not dealing with unused polygons. It's really simple. In this case, I think I can reduce some texture space by just going and adding that cut right there, and then I'm going to remove these polygons. So this will add some faces, but when it comes to texturing, it'll texture a little nicer. There you go. So now I have to texture half of that, and also I can use the other half for high resolution. Next, I'm going to hide that one. This piece. Oops, let's go and hide that. This piece here. I'm going to first start off by cutting off that on either side, and let's just see how this looks. Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. That looks actually pretty nice. I know it looks a little weird, but it lays flat and it's all one shell, so I'm not worrying about what piece is this. You know, I can find this one piece and I know, okay, this whole entire shell here goes to this piece here. So I'm gonna hide that. Oops, I don't know why these aren't hiding. That's weird. Makes them hiding when I'm not in the proper mode. So for this, I'm going to actually go ahead and cut there, and then I'm going to grab this edge, and I do need to cut. Let me see. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the seam, and let's see what it looks like as is. So that looks good, but I do need to cut one seam here, at least one seam. So I'm going to find a seam that I think is going to be hidden the best, and I think up this corner will be hidden pretty well. And then now, there you go. This one's lays flat for me. So let's go and hide that one. I know this is kind of getting a little tedious, to be honest, but it is part of the process. It's some people find it their least favorite. Personally, I really enjoy this part of the process. To me, it's like a puzzle. You know, how can I make this look the best? So it just, to me, just makes a lot of sense, and I really enjoy that part of the game, I guess if you want to call it. Okay, so for here, I need to cut a seam along these round edges, and then I do need to cut a seam along the back, and I can actually move these 2 pieces right here, or those 2 seams. So now it's going to lay nice and flat for me. 5 shells, which is fine because I know I need this shell and this shell and this shell, and these 2 will just lay flat on either side for me. Okay, so that one's nice and cleaned up, and as you can see, the nice thing is as you're going, you're simply just process elimination. Eventually, when you have nothing else left, you are good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unwrap this key here, and again, I just want to cut these 2 seams here and here, and now it's going to lay nice and flat. That's good. Now this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to keep the array. And so now all I have to do really is just cut this seam here and here like I did with the other key. And if I mark those seams, this one too should lay flat. Whatever I do to this key, that array, it'll copy to all these other ones, so I'm good there. So these two, the keys are done, so I'm just going to hide those two. And let me see, I'm going to go ahead and do this triangle here. Now this one's a little bit strange. Let's see if I maybe cut a seam right here. That should lay flat. And it does how I would like it to, so that one's good to go. You know, the less seams the better, but I also do recommend using seams. You know, don't necessarily feel bad with weird shape. I mean, that's just kind of, sometimes the weird shapes give you the best look. So for this one, I want this to lay flat, and this is a pretty easy, you know, just hit the corners and it'll lay flat for you. So that looks pretty good there. I can hide that. And these last few are going to be fairly straightforward. Lay those flat, mark seams, unwrap it, hide it, on to the next one. So we are at this point moving at a pretty fast rate. Feel free to pause this. Really, the reason I'm doing this in real time is I want to show you. I just want to make sure if you do have any questions about any one of these pieces, you don't feel like I left you kind of in the dark. So for this piece here, you know, same thing as the keys. We just have to unwrap the one, and it'll apply to the rest of them. So for this one, I only need to, just like a key, I just need to mark these two seams, lay that flat, and now it's going to apply to the other three as well. So at that point, I can go ahead and select this and select this and hide it. And so now we're on to the home stretch. We just have this bench here. So for the bench, you know, this bench was initially a bunch of different pieces, so I could go ahead and come in here now that it's been kind of changed to the proper size. I can come in, I can actually now separate by loose parts. And so anything that is kind of its own part, it'll separate at that. So here, I'm going to go ahead and cut a seam. Ooh, this might be a little interesting. We'll cut a seam there. And then I'm going to cut a seam along each one of these corners. So let's go ahead and, oops, not mark sharp, mark seam. And then I think, let's see how this looks at this point. That's not bad, although it does look a little weird there. So maybe I'll go ahead and, yeah, let's go ahead and mark all these corners. I know it's not perfect, and ideally I don't like to mark them in corners, but at least then there'll be one big piece. As you see here, this is a little bit nicer because I can actually paint. Maybe it's not. I don't know, maybe I'll. Let me go ahead and I'm going to clear all these seams. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to this point, go here on either one of these sides. There you go. So let's go ahead and mark these two seams. Let's try to wrap that. Ooh, that's weird. Didn't mark those seams for me. Maybe I clicked the wrong button. Definitely possible. Okay, this looks a little nicer. I might come in here and I can turn off my. I'm gonna grab this piece. I'm gonna turn off my sink. I might come in here and actually start to. Let's see if I can. I'm gonna just line this up a little bit. Looks pretty good there. I think actually this looks overall decent. Don't have a whole lot of complaints. Just gonna make sure that everything's kind of lining up. Yeah. Alright, that's okay. So I think I'll live with that one. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this and hide it with Control H. Now these pieces here, I'm just gonna go make sure select. Oops, not. Oh, I said clear sharp. So I'm going to mark seam. Not like that though. I don't know why I'm kind of getting a little bit messy here. I'll unwrap that. Looks pretty good. And I'm marking all these interior seams. That one looks pretty good. Mark seam there. This is one of those situations where I could probably mirror all these, but it was actually a longer task than it needed to be, so I went ahead and didn't mirror them. Oops, let's go ahead and select all those and unwrap it. That's how you want it to. Now I can select these and hide those. So now we're down to the final pieces. So in this case here, I'm going to select these 3 sides, and then I'm going to select these 2 sides here, and these sides as well. I'll go ahead and mark those seams and wrap that. That looks pretty good. And let's see, so I'm down to the final piece. And for this case, I have that, so I'm going to go ahead and I think it actually be best if I just go ahead and cut that there. I think now we're good. So it'll be 2 shells. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, so now Alt H should, let me see. Okay, I don't know why. So show hidden objects, it's Alt H, which for whatever reason wasn't working. That's what I kind of thought it was, but it's weird. So here we go. We have all these pieces unwrapped. And now in the next video, we are going to finish our unwrapping by packing things together, and then start to prepare it for our export for our texturing software.